Good morning. This is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today I'm joined by Dan. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Dan, also known as chairman of the board. Mackenzie and I do a lot of work together, and this is probably the weirdest list we've ever made. But yeah, really excited to talk through these games.
Speaking of this list, so today we're going to be talking about our top 10 board games that we do not want to live in. So we did this. This is kind of a follow-up list to Tia from Takai Joe's and I's list, where we talked about the games that we do want to live in, things that are fun, have great themes, just good worlds to be in. This is not that list. So this is the exact opposite, games that are absolutely repulsive and some that might be a little bit more interesting than you may think at first glance. So I'm really curious. I was talking to Dan before this about just what we're going to do for this. It seems really fascinating of a topic. So I'm curious. So Dan, when you made this list, what were you thinking? What were the things that kind of drove you?
Okay, so I actually just ended up looking through obviously all the games I played, and some, I had a look at the ones that initially sprung to mind as not being very pleasant. And I found myself going down a certain rabbit hole of, I don't know if you followed this pattern as well, but it's a bit like when you watch, scary films or movies, that I always find things that could be real scarier than the ones that are more fantastical. So it wasn't a hard exclusion, but when I made my final list, I thought these are all things that are plausible and could happen. So mine's gone down more that side of things. And I also put a restriction on myself to try and avoid particular or specific events, etc. So a game that that was kind of crossed my mind was a game like The Grizzled, and I thought, this is a horrible, time in history, World War I in the trenches. I tried to exclude that and kind of stick to more generic style of things. What about yourself? Did you put any restrictions on yourself or anything like that?
I don't think I put any extreme restrictions. So, yeah, nothing extreme, but I definitely took it at the same idea as you, where I thought about what would happen, what would, if I were in that actual situation, how would I feel? So, definitely going more towards the, would this be hell if this was real? So, try to keep that in mind myself. So, I'm glad we're kind of on the same page as this. So, that being said, are you ready to start our number fives?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's do it, Dan.
Do you want me to start?
Go for it.
Okay, so my number 5 is probably the silliest one on my list, or just about. This is actually, weirdly enough, just won the Spiel des Jahres. This is Micro Macro Crime City. This, on the face of it, you might think, yeah, this is a fun, silly kids game. But when you actually have a look what's going on in this city, it's actually pretty dark. You've got stalking going on. You've got people spiking each other's drinks, and they're having car crashes. You've got murder. You've got GBHs going on. It's absolutely horrendous. So all in one condensed little city. So this is certainly not somewhere I'd want to invest in any property or would want to live myself. But yeah, I always thought this was really strange. Actually, the more I thought about it, because I know we both discussed what would win the Spiel des Jahres, and we said Micro Macro's a shoo-in, is going to win it, and it did. But when I thought about it more deeply, I'm thinking, how did this even become an option? Did you think that at all about the actual motives and things that are going on behind this game? It's not family friendly appropriate at all.
It's really funny because I heard some people discussing this, like, hey, this is like the first game that like heavily features murder that's shown up in any awards, and I think that's a real thing. And this actually like barely missed my list. So this is a great pick, Dan. Oh my gosh! But yeah, it's awful. Like it's literal crime city. So yes.
Yeah, but if you're not familiar with the game, it's pretty simple. It's almost like that. Well, Where's Waldo or Where's Wally if you live in the UK, where you have this massive map with loads of things going on, and you are searching through like with a fine tooth comb certain things that are going on, trying to basically backtrack on certain events to see who the culprit was, what the motive was, this kind of thing. Very clever, extremely innovative, and probably one of the most innovative concepts of board game that I've seen in a long time. So I always like it when kind of familiar things are injected into the board gaming space, and this has done a great job and opened up a whole new space of games like this that could be made. So I think the designs of Micro Macro have done a great job of kind of laying out the foundation for their future for many years to come, because they've got a great little system here that they can exploit to the hills.
I totally agree with you. This is one of my favorite crime-solving games just in period. I love the way that the kind of objectives are revealed throughout the game as opposed to all kind of saved for the end. I think it gives
Yeah.
you a really good narrative to the whole like crime-solving, aspect. So I really enjoy that about Micro Macro, and I like how they're like all different ratings. I like that it's really easy to follow. This is one that I do really, really enjoy. So I think it's a good pick. And like you said, for terrible worlds to live in, just like a bunch of these cases in general focus on almost all of them focus on some type of murder. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I wouldn't want to drive on their roads. I wouldn't want to go anywhere in that city. It's horrendous.
No, thank you. So great pick, Dan. Number 5, Micro Macro Crime City. So that is the first entry to the list. And as Dan's kind of already shown, some of these games might not be the first thing you think of when you think of a terrible place to be in. Now, mine might be something that you're actually thinking of, going into this list. And this is going to be that classic scenario of zombies. And this is going to specifically, though, be Dead of Winter. So Dead of Winter here introduces a zombie world where not only do you have to deal with the zombie apocalypse, but you also have to deal with the frigid cold. And on top of all of that, the worst thing that you have to deal with are other people. So the worst thing in Dead of Winter here is you're not just trapped, surrounded by zombies, but you're with all these survivors you can't trust, and that is a terrible feeling. So you're not only afraid of everything, but also human nature is getting you, and that just seems like a terrible experience. You're here you are trying to keep your last shred of humanity, and you can't trust anybody, or you may find yourself a traitor and be completely hopeless. And there's just no positives coming from this situation. Now, Dead of Winter as a whole is a game where it's semi-cooperative. You have one traitor, and the rest of the team is going to be kind of facing off and foraging, going after some type of objective where you're going to face off these relentless hordes of zombies. So you're going to take control of multiple survivors, potentially, which will give you more actions, the more survivors you have, and you're going to send them out to go forage, go to locations, take out zombies, and hopefully not lose them on the way. You can suffer things like frostbite. You can instantly turn into zombies. So the game can very much fluctuate based on a dice roll. And unfortunately, that seems like it's kind of the scenario with Dead of Winter as a whole, where this whole situation that you're in could really fluctuate based on a specific person, just terrible luck. And once again, I don't really want to spend these last days being overly stressed, being surrounded by frostbite, and surrounded by untrustworthy people that are all are selfish, and every character in this game is selfish. You as a player have your own secret agenda that you have to complete to win the game. So it may not seem that you may seem that you're a traitor just because you're trying to complete this agenda and trying to win. So with this in mind, translated into real world, this sounds like an absolutely awful experience. Dan, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is a fantastic pick. It actually made my shortlist. Yeah, I love that concept of not only being a zombie game, which is bad enough in itself, but again the natural, the pressures of the environment. I think this isn't a game I enjoy particularly. I think it's okay, but I love the actual thought of it, and the fact that again that it's not all about fighting the zombies off. It's the elements against you as well, and that's equally as bad of a threat. And again, that sprinkle on top with the people stabbing you in the back. Being desperate to feed your people, having also the kind of moral dilemmas that are put in front of you as well. You've got a colony here, you've got some outsiders coming in. Do you take them in? You can't really feed them. Everyone's going to have to starve, or do you let them go and fend for themselves and potentially die or turn on you? So yeah, I love those kind of little moral dilemmas, and the game actually does a great job of adding that theme in through that crossroads system. Really, really well executed, but not my style of game. But the theme and the concept is so good for this list.
Yep, totally agree with you. It's not my favorite game. I think there are a lot of semi-co-op games that do it better. Kind of, distribute the actions a little bit more. I find that if you get really lucky, you're ending up with like 10 actions and everybody else has like one. And so it gets kind of lopsided pretty quickly. But this one in particular, the theme is great. I love the crossroads mechanic, and I love that things can change as you play. And just like real life, if you have all this crazy stuff, all this crazy drama happening, on top of the zombie apocalypse. I mean, in Zombicide, at least you're like a team of 6 that works well together. You're all helping each other to survive. In this, no, there's no questions that you are pretty much on your own here, and it's you first. And this just seems like a miserable place to be in. So that's my number 5. That is Dead of Winter. Oh my gosh. All right, that puts us into our number 4s. Dan, what do you got for me?
Okay, at number 4, I have a strange game, not only in terms of its theme, but also the mechanisms themselves. This is a game called The Bloody Inn. Now, The Bloody Inn is it's a game where you, as the player, are supposed to be this innkeeper in kind of France from a long, long time ago. And the idea is that you are trying to bring, guests into your hotel, and then you're going to murder them, you're going to steal all their money, then you're going to try and bury them under kind of an annex on the building. And that in itself is horrendous enough, but the fact that you're kind of trying to rope in people into your little scheme, you're going to try and pay them off, and to make you a more efficient killer, that is all horrible. And obviously that it's got on one aspect of being the player itself, it's kind of you could make a horrible mistake, and then you're going down this rabbit hole that you can't get out of, and then the police are coming in, and you've got to kill the police, and then you've got to try and bury all the bodies before the police come in again. But also, of course, if you're one of the guests themselves, this is not a predicament you want to be in either. So it's an absolutely morbid game that's pretty horrible in its theme. But the reason I picked this one was not only because of that, but the actual artwork itself, as you can see here from the images. I think it just captures the vibe of the game so well. It does a great job of just bringing out the emotion and the trauma of the game. And the gameplay itself is pretty simple. It's a bit different in terms of wrapping your head around the way things work, as you are acquiring cards, and then you are kind of using those cards to get almost discounts on doing these different things, whether it's going to be killing someone, whether it's going to be burying them, etc. But the more people you kind of bring into your scheme, the more you've got to pay them, which can end up costing you more money. And it's quite a tricky little game, but not overly complex. But yeah, the theme is horrendous. It's it's gory, it's vicious, and I just think it's a nice little package in terms of the artwork, and it's nice. It's a concise, compact little game. But it's certainly bleak and pretty nasty.
Oh my gosh. So I've heard of this one. I've heard this compared to things like theme-wise, Abomination Era, Frankenstein, and stuff like that. But this is, oh man, I never actually looked into the artwork on this. It's, like you said, it's pretty morbid. Now, be truthful. If you were to be in this game, who would you be? Would you be the person working the hotel or one of the guests?
Well, I'd rather be the person working there because I'm going to survive, but I might have to do a bit of a prison sentence. But I'd rather not be murdered in my sleep and have my possessions robbed from me. So yeah.
All right. Oh my gosh. Oh wow. This is terrible. Yeah. Tim is Average has a comment on our last number here. He says that Dead of Winter has the kind of swinginess of Betrayal at House on the Hill, and he kind of likes that. Oh, go figure. Yeah. And he also has a comment. Yeah, he also has a comment here on Bloody Inn. Seems like one of those dark horror comedies. Family that accidentally killed a guest and was like, this is way more profitable. I could see that. Do you think you could be one of those quirky owners, making murder fun, family-friendly murder?
Well, I don't know how to answer that.
Do you want to answer that?
Right. No, I don't think so. No, Tim is right, though. Although it is extremely bleak, extremely, morbid, the vibe it gives out is almost like that tongue-in-cheek style of thing. It's not like it's got tremendous detail. It's all kind of implied what you're doing and stuff. Although it's clearly written, you don't see graphic images of people getting murdered, etc. And it is almost like that. Yeah, like kind of Alfred Hitchcock style vibe rather than something incredibly graphic.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think this is a pretty great pick. Having to be either forced in a situation where you have to murder for money, or having, being murdered yourself. I think either of those results would probably not be the best, in my opinion. Oh my gosh. So that is Dan's number 4, The Bloody Inn. So my number 4 here is Let's see. My number 4 here, people might think may be higher than it is, and you'll see why. But my number 4 here is one of my favorite games, one of the games that I've probably talked about a lot on this channel. This is going to be Kingdom Death Monster. So Kingdom Death Monster here, similarly to Zombicide, has you in like a settlement of survivors. So the best thing that I can say about this game is that you do have camaraderie. You have people that are with you that are going to help you survive. But that's probably the best thing that I can say about it. Kingdom Death Monster puts you in a nightmare world where you have to do your best to survive. And that means that you're going to be hunting for beasts. So you'll be taking on these terrible nightmare creatures in order to skin them alive and create your own settlement, your tools, everything out of their dead corpses. So not only are you fighting constantly to survive in this harsh environment, but everything, every turn is going to kill you. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the way Kingdom Death Monster is. It has the swinginess of dice rolls that are constantly happening. You could lose an arm in an instant, and just the amount of death and despair and terrible things that exist in this world are it's not countable. It's everywhere, and you have no idea. Like this, you have this thing that literally will just show up in your dreams. You're not even safe when you sleep. There's some Freddy Krueger stuff coming on over here. In addition to this, you actually have creatures that are going to populate the world that are searching for you, and I think that probably is the scariest thing here. So there's a system in the game called the Nemesis Monster System, where normally you're going to take your crew out and you go hunt creatures. Well, sometimes you get your crew to go hunt and you go out your front door and there's something there waiting for you. So it's pretty terrifying when that happens, and that happens pretty consistently. On the bright side, you do know when those come up, so you can prepare for it. But just the fact that not only are you hunting, but you're also being hunted is pretty damn scary situation to be in. And this just in general it's not a good place to be. A world where everything can kill you, from the grass to the sun. It's not good. I mean, the sun will kill you in our world too, but I mean, this one it's a little bit more literal. The sun has a mouth, so you gotta be careful on this one. So Tim is average. He comments, "Wow, maybe I don't want to know what your number 1 is." Tim, I don't think you'd be able to guess my number 1 if you tried. It was actually a surprise to me, so I'm curious to see if you can, though. Dan, what are your opinions on Kingdom Death Monster? Is this something you've tried yet? I know that we've talked about it a couple times.
No, I've not played the game, but yeah, it certainly looks pretty dark. Death surrounding you at all times. But for some reason, us as people, we kind of find this stuff interesting, and will always be a market for this kind of thing. But yeah, so, even like the artwork and the deformities of the monsters and stuff just has that extra 20% worse than anything else out there. All the rotting bodies and all the deformities and stuff. Yeah, it's horrible but fascinating.
Correct. And the reason this isn't super high on the list is you do have that camaraderie. Like, you're literally building a settlement and you're going to live for generations. Like, you're going to grow up and probably think this is normal by the time you end with it. Like, from the outside perspective, it seems awful. Don't want to be in this at all. But if you're actually in it, you could probably make friends. You could have families. You could have partnership. You could have things that would last potentially lifetimes. But you could also just get murdered right from the start. So there's that too, and they're generally not good ways. You're going to get dismembered first. You might go insane. You may just be drift off into the darkness. Your settlement might just kill you for just cause you have no idea what's going to happen here, and it could be pretty bad.
So what was just thematically, what was the kind of catalyst on this world happening? Was it a normal world and then all these things happened, or was it a portal? Or
so thematically, you have no idea. Thematically, you wake up, like the introduction of the prologue here. It says that you wake up with your eyes like covered in this black ink. So you kind of break off that ink so you can open your eyes, and it's you and 3 other people. Or you and a couple other people in like this empty field, and a lion is there and is starting to kill people. And so you either just die to the lion, or you and 3 others, you kind of band together, pick up these pieces of rock off the ground, and you stand and fight. And that's where it starts, and you just kind of explore from there. So you have no idea how you came to be, but you wake up fully grown, you wake up with this stuff on your eyes, and you wake up with the will to survive. And that's Kingdom Death Monster's kind of story. And you learn more about the world as you kind of experience the different events. It's pretty fascinating. I really like the world, but it's also one that I don't ever really want to find myself in. So hence why it's on this list.
Cool. Good pick.
Thank you. So that's my number 4. Dan, what is your number 3?
Okay, so my number 3 is actually taken a different approach rather than the murder and stuff. This is more kind of more like disasters and catastrophes and just hardships you've got to overcome. This is actually a Euro game where the mechanisms come through quite strongly. This is In the Year of the Dragon. So this is, believe it or not, is a Steffenfeld game who is certainly not known for his theme or his world building or anything like that. But the idea that you've got to overcome all these horrible things that are happening to you, I guess in the course of a year, where in 1 month there's going to be just droughts, and the next month there's going to be disease, and then there's going to be you're going to be attacked by a little war band, and it's just relentless, just keeps smashing and smashing against you. And it really is about overcoming all that horrible stuff that happens to you, and surviving basically. And the reason that I picked this one is not only because of that. But as I said, the actual gameplay does a great job of making you feel stressed, making you feel like you have to overcome all this stuff. And by the time the game's done, you feel like you've just, you feel like you've been through it all. And I just, obviously it's horrible, going through all these things. It's just the consistency, and it's just like it goes from bad to worse. How to kind of use the people that are going to be helpful to you, but knowing when to say, you know what, you're not useful to me anymore. Get out. You've got no home anymore. We're going to bring someone in who's going to get us through the next hardship. So yeah, certainly not an experience I'd want to go through with this much, just again, trauma, this much just horrible things happening from start to finish. But the gameplay itself is fantastic, and it's a real different approach and a different feel to all the other Steffenfeld games out there, which are normally just weird themes, just points coming out your ears, just points thrown at you in every way and form. But this one, you got to squeeze for every point you have, and it is again about weathering that storm and about coming out the other end at least intact. So that's my number 3, In the Year of the Dragon.
Interesting. So is this something like Orleans, where you have like these set events that are going to be coming out as you play, or is it something more of like when those events are going to happen?
Okay, so you will actually know. So yeah, as you can see from the board there at the bottom, you've got all these tiles.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to be the whole thing from start to finish. So the first round is going to be the first tile. The last round is going to be that last tile. So you do have a good amount of kind of contingency planning. You know what you need and when you need it. But that doesn't make it easy, because you need to know when to hold things, when to, although they're not going to be useful for you maybe for a few months, because, in the 3rd month, there might be a drought, but then in the 7th month, there might be a drought. But you need the people who are going to be able to cope with that. You might not need him in the middle months, but you're going to want to keep hold of him now, so he's useful later. And, building the actual accommodation for them, you can go that route, but when you do that, you're probably giving up something else you might need sooner. So it really is about prioritizing things, and just about doing what you can, because you're not going to be able to do everything. You're going to have to suffer, you're going to have to suffer fatalities. You're going to have to suffer horrible things happening to you, but it's about doing what you can with what you've got.
Wow. Okay. Gotcha. And that makes sense. It makes sense why you don't want to be in a place like this. Good to have you, Indra. Thanks for coming. No big deal if you're late. Thanks for being here. And Tim is Average says, sounds like a year in Australia. That's excellent. Oh, man. So I'm glad that you like this one, though. I've heard good things about this design by Steffenfeld, but it is very different. So I'm glad to hear that it does stand out. Now, where would you rate this in your Steffenfeld games? Is this a good one, or?
This has actually probably, out of all of his designs, this is the one that's probably been on the incline more than anything. So I started off playing this one. I think maybe I was expecting something different. I thought, yeah, it's okay. The more I play it, the more I enjoy it, because it is so distinct. And I think it's kind of starting to encroach into that top tier bracket. Not the best of the best. So, games like Trajan's are always going to be top for me, but maybe just in the A tier, maybe just in the B tier, but certainly top tier for me.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much, Dan. That is number three in the Year of the Dragon. So my number three here is a very, I think, very unknown game. I don't think anybody ever talks about this. It was in our library for maybe a couple of months and then quickly found its way out. But this game's theme is so interesting. And this game is called So Long My World. Ever heard of this one, Dan, before I pull it up?
I have heard of this one. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So Long My World here, the premise of the game is everybody wakes up one night after having a shared dream that the world is going to end. It actually reminds me of the book The Illustrated Man, where there's a very similar concept, but this is dealing with the fallout of an event like that, where everybody knows they're going to die. Everybody has, that 24-hour period to live, and then after that, it's just nothing. And I think that is such an interesting theme for a game, but absolutely terrifying. And this game explores in its theming what you would do in those final moments. So, are you going to live out, your fantasies? Are you going to be extravagant to spend all your money and do the things you've never done, or are you going to enact revenge on people? Are you going to give in to your anger and your hate? Or what are you going to do with these last 24 hours? And I think that decision itself, and just like knowing that it's all going to be over, that would make me go crazy. I wouldn't know what to do. I would know my time is finite. I would know that I honestly have no idea what I would do in a situation like that. Yeah, it's pretty terrifying. And the fact that you don't really have control over the situation and you're not sure what you're going to be able to do is terrifying to me. So you have no control over the other people that are also facing this dilemma. And I think that's scary. I don't think that I would like to be in a situation like this. Having limited time, you don't have time to think about it. You have no control over other people's actions, and it's kind of fair game. It reminds me of like a purge setting almost, where it's just like honestly anything goes because everybody has to face this reality. So it seems very, very scary. Now the game itself is it's a very simple, like, collect resources, trade resources in for cards game. It uses a simultaneous action selection system where you're all going to be picking a token, revealing it, going to the matching tarot card, and then resolving the action on that card, which will give you usually resources and then the ability to pay for and play cards. And the cards are how you get to score your points. So unfortunately, the game itself is not that good. You're just kind of resolving simple actions, and the action's not that interesting. It has like an idea of like prediction, but the theming and the art for the game, I think, is really superb and absolutely terrifying. So not one that I don't want to be involved in this at all. So Dan, what do you think about this one? How does this theme, play out for you?
Yeah, I suppose it's one of those kind of age-old hypothetical questions, isn't it? That I don't think anybody has the answer for until it's put upon until you put in that reality. So yeah, it's not a nice thing to think about, but interesting anyway. Certainly gives you something to think about. If you were in that position, and again, who knows what route people are going to take? As you said, are you going to do revenge? Are you going to do something positive? But it's interesting to see how people would react in that scenario. But yeah, it's certainly it's something thought provoking, and quite an interesting pick.
And there's a lot of cards in the game that deal with those different choices theme-wise. So once again, a lot of the cards are just going to give you a couple symbols or something like that. But the theming on each card, some of them are really fascinating. They talk about like, expecting mothers that all of a sudden they're like, well, I don't care anymore. Or you have parents who are taking care of their grandparents and they feel like they've wasted their whole entire life because it's going to end in a second. And it's pretty terrible. Some of these dilemmas that you may face. It's really weird and really interesting to think about. So that is my number three, So Long My World. Yeah, very, very terrible experience to find yourself in, knowing that your minutes are your minutes are numbered, your days are numbered. I don't know how to phrase this correctly.
Yeah,
so
good choice.
Tim is Average says it's kind of sad when a game with a good theme or setting falls flat when it comes to gameplay. Totally agree. I was so excited for this one, Tim, and it really disappointed me. So unfortunate, this one did have to go though, but that's how it happens, and always happy to try something that looks interesting and unique. So want to make sure that I give them a chance. So hopefully the next game is better, and hopefully it's a hit for me. So Dan, what are we looking at for our number two here? Number two.
Okay, so my number 2 is almost so horrendous that it's quite funny. So my number 2 is actually a game called Lifeboat. I don't know if you've heard of this game.
I've heard of this game, yeah.
This is one of the most personally. This would be one of the most horrendous experiences that I could go through. So this is where you've got basically, I think it's, well, depending on the player count, you've got this many people in a dinghy in the middle of the ocean, and basically some of those people on that dinghy despise each other and they want to kill each other, and you've got loved ones on that dinghy as well. So just imagine you and your partner, for example, being on this dinghy, and somebody wants to kill your partner, somebody wants to kill you. People are constantly attacking each other. You're short on supplies. There's horrible weapons on this little dinghy. Constant fighting. People throwing each other overseas. Trying to protect people you love, trying to kill people you hate, and all that by sailing, in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight at all. So, yeah, for me, that is an absolute idea of a nightmare for me. The game itself is horrendous. This is a terrible game, but the theme is again, it's that bad that it's almost quite funny when you imagine that one of the characters in this game are actually about a 9-year-old child, and you've got this like 60-year-old man who wants to murder this child with a rusty hook, and you've got to try and protect this child. And it's horrendous, but the artwork and stuff does kind of change the feel a bit. And if you had these realistic pictures, you might take a different approach away from this game. But when you think about it, what the game's about, it's not nice at all. It's pure take that. It goes on a bit too long and stuff, the game itself. But yeah, the theme was always one that struck a chord for me, because I thought, again, it was so brutal, so violent, and just to the point where it was silly, but nonetheless horrendous. And I certainly wouldn't want to live in this game.
Oh my gosh. So, oh man. So is it just this situation of being stuck with these terrible people with, like, a lot of things that can kill you? Or is it the ocean? Do you like the water? I mean, what things of this are really kind of turning you off?
Well, I think it's the desperation and the fact that you're trapped. You can't go anywhere. There's no escape. That's where you are. You can't swim anywhere because you're miles and miles and miles away from any shore. And again, that idea of being claustrophobic and people being on you at all times. Turn you back for a minute, they'll try and throw you off the side of the boat into the shark-infested waters. And not only that, the idea that you've got to protect people as well. So not only have you got to look after yourself and put yourself first, you have to actually put yourself at risk to help somebody else. And of course, you'd want to do that. But yeah, it's horrendous.
Tim is totally right. It's super awkward. Yeah. Anything else to add, Dan?
No, that's as simple as that. I think, again, these kind of I feel a lot worse about games like this than games where there's monsters, because my brain doesn't process that kind of thing, whereas it could process this. And this, although highly unlikely, it's at least plausible.
Gotcha. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it'd be, I totally agree. I mean, I don't think anybody would like the news that, hey, your massive boat is sinking and now you're stuck with these strangers that all have really shady motives, and you have no idea when you'll be able to be saved or rescued, or if that's even a possibility. That's terrifying. Yep. I think this is a great pick. Oh, geez. Oh. Yeah. What would you do in this situation if you were actually in this situation?
Well, I think it's one of those things where you can't even plan, isn't it? It's survival instincts click in, and it's reactionary and not thought doesn't come into it anymore. It's just a free for all, I think.
Yeah. Yep, that's terrifying. Once again, that lack of control. I mean, oh man, that sounds awful. So yeah, that's number 2 for Dan. Lifeboats. Oh my gosh. All right, my number 2 is also a very kind of goofy artwork aesthetic game that a lot of people know, a lot of people play, and this is going to be the game Cash and Guns. So Cash and Guns has you playing as a member of a mafia, but you are in this perpetual, never-ending world where you are constantly going on crime sprees with people that you don't trust that all have loaded guns, and you're constantly being shot at as you play. This seems awful. Like, you are literally just going to be working until you die, and that sounds miserable. So Cash and Guns' gameplay is very straightforward. It is a take that gun, take that game. Oh, let me see if I can find it here. Is there a? Am I on the right one? I'm going to show you this here. Is this? So I'm looking up for Cash and Guns. Is there an older edition of this game?
Yeah, there's two editions of the game.
Here it is. So second edition is the one that I'm familiar with. So I mean, first edition looks pretty intense too. But Cash and Guns is very straightforward. You are going to be basically going into the bank, and the mob boss is going to say, "Everybody, raise up your guns," and you point to somebody, and whoever you point to, that's who you're shooting. And your gun only has 3 bullets, so you're not even a good criminal, which is terrifying to be like in this situation robbing a bank. And you have to decide whether to load that gun with a real bullet or a dud. And so you have to at that moment make a decision if you're going to back out of this life of crime or if you're going to stay and commit. So seeing as your only 2 options in this game are be poor and get caught by the police and have a terrible time that way, or get shot potentially by your own teammates, this seems awful, and your life is on a repeat. It goes like this forever. You get no sleep, you get no nothing. You are constantly in this situation of fight or flight. And that sounds absolutely miserable, to be surrounded with people that you don't trust, to be consistently shot at until either you just die of old age because you've been robbing stuff for in your entire life. There's no thrill. You don't get to spend any of that money, or you die. Those are your 2 options here. And that sounds super miserable. The game itself is extremely light. Once again, this is like probably the most take thatty that you can get. It features these big foam guns, which are fun. But I had a friend of mine tell me a story recently where he's one of the army guys, and he was playing this, and in the middle of game night, somebody points a this foam gun at him. He had no idea what was happening, so he does like a disarming move on the person that pulls this on him, and oh man, he flipped the person that he's playing with. Oh, it was really, really, really crazy. So not only awkward situations in the game, but potentially awkward situations in real life with this one too. So I don't know. Have you played this one, Dan? What do you think here?
I have played it. I actually do like the game, but I actually didn't cross my mind because you get so disarmed, no pun intended, but you get disarmed about the theme and the artwork, don't you? You're a bit like Lifeboat. You got this cartoony, silly artwork. You actually think about what you're doing, and it's pretty bad. But yeah, this is a really fun game. I do like it. I didn't consider it for the list because you have got that option of saying no, I'm out. But yeah, not a nice situation. And if you're familiar with a film called Reservoir Dogs, then this is basically Reservoir Dogs, the board game. So
yeah, okay, I've not seen Reservoir Dogs. Mm-mm.
Oh yeah, you need to watch that. It's a great film, and this is basically what that's about.
Excellent. Tim is Average says, yeah, that just sounds exhausting. You're right. I'll pass on that. Job with a retirement plan. Yes. Yes, please. I'm not about, consistently robbing banks with a mob boss I don't trust, with all these people that have loaded guns that are planning on pointing them at you. And the fact that you're going to get something pointed at you each round. Terrible, terrible. Maybe it'd be different if I was consistently the mob boss, but seeing as, you're giving up some of your money to get that position, is it really worth it? Well, when you're in a perpetual state of gonna die, it's probably better to be safe, huh? So we'll see. Death or money. Tough choice, huh? So that's my number 2, Cash and Guns.
Cool.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into our number 1s. Dan, anything to add before we jump in?
No, let's just crack on.
Let's do it.
Okay, so my number 1 is a game called Room 25. So this is, if you're familiar with the movie franchise or film franchise called Saw, this reminds me a bit like that. However, it's slightly more in the future, a bit more sci-fi, where you are these bunch of people placed in this big vault, I suppose. And the idea is that you are trying to navigate these rooms room by room. However, some of these rooms are safe, so like control rooms, you can look at cameras and things. Some of them, you are just walking into a horrific scenario, such as you're going to be frozen alive, or you're going to be drowned, or you're going to be burnt alive, or just blown up. And and on top of all that, you're trying to navigate this massive kaleidoscope of all these different rooms where the floors are constantly changing and shifting. And you've got to navigate your way through all these atrocities and get to room 25 to try and get out of the building. But on top of all that, a bit like Dead of Winter, you've got one player who's an undercover guard and is trying to throw you all under the bus. He's trying to kill you all and to stop you from leaving. And you got to work out who's going to who you can trust, who you can't trust, because one of the actions in the game is to just push people blindly into rooms and can just make you die instantly or make you slowly die or drown. Or it's certainly not a scenario I'd want to be in. I think slightly toned down because of that sci-fi aspect to it, which kind of pulls it away slightly from reality. But yeah, these kind of trial style of games and scenarios where you have to go through all of this horrible stuff to get out. That's just that doesn't really bear worth thinking about. So yeah, my number one, a semi-cooperative game that I don't really like the game, to be honest. It's not my cup of tea, but the actual theme and stuff is really interesting, and I'd love to see a game use this theme again and be more to my taste. But the actual system and the idea and the concept of the game is horrendous. That is Room 25.
Oh my gosh! Have you seen the Saw movies? Are those?
Yeah, I've seen them all. Yeah. This one's slightly different again, a bit more clinical and a bit more high tech. But yeah, the theme and premise is similar, I suppose.
Gotcha. I didn't realize that there was a game like this. The only thing that I can think of that's similar is there's a scenario in the Arkham Horror card game where it's kind of like a Saw scenario. So this one is, I didn't realize that there was something that actually focused on this gameplay wise. So out of all these rooms that you would be potentially thrust in, what would be the worst one, you think?
Oh, I can't think of any exact ones, but
what are some bad ones?
Yeah, being slowly drowned is not nice. There's loads of bad ones, and the funny thing is on these on these sheets they say very particular things or very specific things what these rooms do, and none of them are nice. So yeah, I can't think of any specific ones, but
the room of death.
They're all,
oh my gosh!
Yeah.
You just straight up die. The
Saw
room, acid.
Yeah, like an acid room. Yeah, it's not nice.
I mean, acid room. That seems pretty bad, right? Like I don't know if there's any going up from acid room.
Yeah.
I guess the death room. What's death room?
I don't know. I think I'll go for the acid room on your question there. That's the room I wouldn't want to go to.
Okay. Just cover yourself in bleach. You'll be fine. All right. Tim is Average says, reminds me of the sci-fi horror cube. Yeah, no thanks. Not a place he'd like to find himself. Yeah, I agree. This sounds absolutely miserable. As you said, every room is trying to kill you. No, thank you. How do you survive in this game? How do you survive the acid room?
So I think some of the rooms are instant death. You do not want to walk in them. So one of the actions is to kind of like peek into the room before you walk into it, for example.
Okay.
But some of them, I think you have to be out in a certain amount of turns or something, and other people can try and help you and things like that. But the worst of the worst rooms are instant death, and there's no way out of it.
Gotcha. So it's a lost cause is what you're saying. And the fact that there's a traitor in this makes it even worse, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Man.
Yep. No, thank you. Good number one, Dan. Never heard of this one, but that is Dan's number one, Room 25. All right. So now we jump into my number one here. And my number one is also a very different game. Think along the lines of Cash and Guns, where this is a situation where I just don't want to find myself in. And I think it would be a absolute nightmare to be stuck in a never-ending cycle of death, misery, and stress. And that's what my number one is. It's going to be the game Fuse. So Fuse is my number one. Fuse has you playing as a bomb squad. Your whole thing is you are trying to defuse bombs. And you have 10 minutes to do so. This game itself is a real-time game. So you're actually actively rolling dice here and trying to use those dice to defuse bombs. And if you don't do it in the 10 minutes, you blow up and you die. And that's it. In Fuse, you are perpetually working and you're perpetually in a state of constantly trying to make sure that you are rescuing people. So if you fail, you don't just fail yourself, but you kill hundreds of people at the same time. And that's the entire life. That's all you do. Every single minute of every single day, you're constantly trying to defuse bombs and making sure that nobody is dying. So the game mechanics in Fuse are exactly as I described. It's a real-time game. You're going to have these dice in front of you. Pull out a couple at a time, but if you don't pull out the exact number you need, you got to put them back in and re-pull. And then with the dice, you're going to have to assign them to these cards. And each card has like a little mini game on it. So it could be something like this, where you need to stack them in a specific tower. It could be something like this, where you just need specific numbers. So it kind of depends on the difficulty level that you're using, as well as the difficulty level of the bomb. So this is exactly as Tim is saying here. This is Anxiety, the game. So could you imagine being in a perpetual state of anxiety? And if you fail, there are actual consequences. People die. It's your fault. So if you don't do this forever, then people will die, and it's on your hands. And the thing to top it off here is there is an app that you can use that has the most sassy voice and attitude about the whole thing, that is constantly going to be telling you, like, hey, you're going to die. Hey, it's up to you. Oh, that was a terrible job. And you got to listen to that the whole time? No, thank you. This sounds absolutely garbage. Give me a settlement in the darkness with a crew of people that actually love you and care for you any day of the week over nonstop anxiety, death, exhaustion, and terrible, terrible times. So that's my number one, Fuse. Dan, what do you think about this game?
So yeah, interesting pick. The only thing I'd say about this one, I'm assuming that if you're in this game, you're in that world, you would have the training and the expertise to be able to deal with it. Whereas if it's yourself as being Mackenzie Franklin in this world, I can completely understand where you're coming from, because I assume you don't know how to dismantle bombs. But yeah, obviously that constant pressure and anxiety and high stakes is not nice. But yeah, good pick. I love that kind of that timer. The bomb's going to go off. Not only are you doing it for yourself, you're doing it for other people as well. But yeah, my only kind of thing I'd slightly critique is the fact that you would have the skills to deal with it.
I think that even if you had the skills to do something like this, would that really what you want to be doing forever? Like you don't get a break. It's just consistent. How many bombs is this person putting in this place? It's terrifying. Like oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine. Like if I work as a plumber, do I want to be plumbing my entire life? That sounds absolutely miserable, to be working in like a sewer system forever. That sounds awful. And this is that, but you can die. It's the worst. Oh,
okay,
man.
Fair point.
Oh man, even if I had the expertise. Yeah. Oh man, I still feel like even if you're a really good bomb diffuser, you'd have extreme anxiety if you had to just consistently do it forever.
Yeah.
Oh man, this reminds me of some Twilight Zone stuff where you're just like always at your job, or I don't know if you saw WandaVision recently, but where you're just kind of typing away every day and you're stuck in this reality. That's what this reminds me of.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Not certainly not something I'd want to be in personally, but yeah, interesting pick, and certainly a game I actually want to try because I've heard this is a really good real-time game.
Oh, you haven't tried this one?
No, I haven't. No, I've not played any of the King Klenko ones.
So King Klenko does a lot of fun stuff. I think Fuse is his cleanest and best design, in my opinion. I think it's one of my favorites. This is probably my second favorite real-time game, with number one being Project Elite. But I really enjoy Fuse. I actually think it's an incredible game. This is one that my wife and I play a lot, and it plays all the way up to, I think, 4 or 5, and it plays all player counts well, from solo to 5. So it's a good experience. I really like it. And I like that you have that clear timer, and it's going to be over in 10 minutes. So even if you're not a big fan, you don't have to be there forever. So I mean, yeah, you'll know after the first play if it's something you enjoy, which is nice. Yeah. But I do enjoy this as a real-time game. But that's the list. Those are our top 10 board game worlds that we do not want to be in. We think they're absolutely dreadful for various reasons, whether it be murder, monotony, or absolute terror or awkward situations. So that's the list. Dan, did any games that you had thought for your short list not make it onto this list?
Yeah, so I mentioned the Grizzled earlier, but I did kind of exclude that one. Another game that weirdly enough crossed my mind was Forbidden Desert. So the Matt Leacock game, where you're just stranded in the desert with a kind of damaged plane, I suppose, or some kind of ship, and you've got to go around the desert battling the harsh climate and trying to collect all the parts of those ships and assemble the ship to get going again. And obviously you're suffering from thirst and the obviously excruciating heat. And yeah, that's certainly something I wouldn't deal well with. I don't deal terribly well with the really horrible heat. So yeah, that one crossed my mind. But yeah, the other one that crossed my mind was Dead of Winter, which was on your list. So yeah, that was my two honorable mentions, really. What about yourself?
Gotcha. Well, really quick, Tim is average here has an honorable mention. He says just living in a Lacerda game would be a nightmare. Having to deal with the constant pressure and all those extra mechanics and the sequence of events. Oh, that does sound like it could be pretty miserable. For me, you actually covered one that that I had definitely thought about, Micro Macro Crime City. I think that's a terrible place to live in, honestly. You have a lot of people that are really happy there, though, so maybe it's not the absolute worst place to be. But I do think that a place that's literally called Crime City, no thank you. That does not sound very appealing. Another couple games, anything that has to do with disease seems pretty bad. So like the pandemic games, we've lived through the pandemic though, so I mean it can't be that bad, right? Yeah, it still sounds miserable though, especially when you have it spreading at that extreme rate and when there are multiple pandemics at the same time. My dad has this, he's a doctor and he has one of these huge fears that the way that the world is going to go is through disease, and the pandemic just gives him major anxiety. So I don't think he even plays the game because it's too real for him. It's too scary for him. Takaijo here says Plague Incorporated. So is Takaijo, you have to remind me, is that the one where you play as the disease trying to infect everybody? I'm curious. I don't remember that one. I have not played Plague Incorporated. You'll have to let me know. But those were two that I was thinking specifically about. I'm actually going to do a continuation of this list because I have like an extra 15 of these games that I was thinking about. This is just a big list for me. There's a lot of games that are pretty miserable if you think about it. So
it's a really good fun list to make, actually, something a bit different. And I always thought, when we talk about these kind of darker themed games, I know a lot of people, it tends to push some people away. They're kind of veering away from this style of theme. Has a game ever got to the point where you didn't want to play it because of the theme or not?
I don't think any game has put me off because of the theme ever. I think the only time a game has put me off theme-wise is when I just don't feel comfortable with the theme. And it's nothing to do if it's like gritty or dark, but more if it's just like a situation that I don't really like. For example, there was a game where you're like manipulating the events of like these teenage girls in order to like seduce somebody for like a festival or like a boyfriend aspect. And that one just felt kind of weird to me because I was basically controlling all these different women in order to set them up with a guy. And I was like, I don't know if I'm on board with this. It's like it's one of the Japanime games a friend of mine wanted to try. And I was like, So there's like a specific anime I think that it's about. I think it's like called harem anime or something like that. But not a thing that I'm really interested in exploring more. So that was probably the only game that I thought to myself like, I don't know if I like this kind of thing of like manipulating situations to cause stuff like this. So yeah, that was a weird one for me. How about yourself, Dan? Any game that you kind of stay away from?
No, not at all, really. I'm quite cold and quite unshakable, I think. Yeah, I've got quite a thick skin, so I don't think I've never really been offended or put off by anything. I tend to not favor that kind of really dark world, not because I'm offended or scared, whatever. It's just because it just doesn't overly interest me. But yeah, I couldn't say I've ever been completely turned off by a theme to the point where I wouldn't play it, for example, out of pure principle, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. And much like you, I'm willing to give anything a try. That one in particular, that game, I forget what it's called, but that game in particular, the gameplay also was just not that good. So that also may have added to it. So, I mean, that's that. Takaijo has a response here. She says, yes, this is the game that you can actually control the disease and you can mutate. So I don't know if I was the disease, would it be that bad? I mean, you would be successful, right? If you were the one actually spreading yourself around. I mean, that would ideally. Sorry, one more time, Dan.
Not if you lose.
Oh, not if I lose. That's correct. So, oh goodness. Takaijo also has her comment here for the world that she doesn't want to live in is ghost stories. Village with ghosts and ghouls. So yeah, relentless assault of things that are creeping in, and you got to rely on other people to save you. Oh my goodness. She also says that there's too much competition in our current climate. That's fantastic. Oh man. And also, anybody else in the comments? Tim, do you have a game that you are thinking of that you would hate to live in? We've got Tia's answer here with ghost stories. So fantastic. Oh my gosh. Terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I'm trying to think now of any other games that have maybe put me off that I've passed on the opportunity to play. I think the only times I've passed on a game are when they're like specifically maybe Cards Against Humanity clones. I think that's the only time that I've like passed on playing a game.
Yeah. That's what I just don't find it very funny, or don't find it particularly clever.
Yep, totally agree. Yep, but definitely down to try pretty much any game.
Yeah, same.
I was doing research for a list that I was thinking of doing. This was the top 10 super like controversial or very strange games, and one that came up was Consenticle. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
It is the weirdest thing. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's like this anime style art, and it's about consenting to tentacles kind of having their way with you. It's like such a weird game. Oh my gosh, like that was like right off the bat I was like, all right, this is where this list is going. I kind of just put up my stuff, close the tabs. I'm like, all right, I'm done doing the research on this one.
I can't imagine there's a big market for that one.
I don't know. I think it did well on Kickstarter, though. Who knows? Clearly, there's some people bought it because it's an actual published thing.
Amazing.
So strange. Give some folks at home something to search later. So,
go play with your family and kids.
Yeah, that could be your what is it, the crowning jewel of your board game collection. Show everybody off.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So that's everything for our list here. Anything else you want to say before we close up, Dan?
No, just thanks for having me on. It's been really fun and something a bit different. I don't normally make these kinds of lists, so it was a nice welcome change for me. And really enjoyed it. So thanks again.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here, Dana. I know that this is a very different list for you, but I do appreciate your insight and your thought in here. And I think you brought some very interesting scenarios and games to the table. So always glad to hear from you. You've got great perspective on this. So once again, thank you for joining me this morning. But that is our list. That is everything. What are your worlds that you would not like to live in? What are these games that you wish that you had time to step away from? We'd love to hear what you think. Once again, please leave in the comments. And before we go, Tim does have a comment here. He says that an odd choice may be viticulture. Turn his love of wine into a job. That makes sense.
That's
kind of live. Yep. That's a great choice, because once you turn something that you love into work, you might start hating it. So, oh man, that's a great pick. Great list, great choices. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for being here, and thank you everybody for checking in. And if you're watching this after the fact, thank you so much for tuning in and joining Dan and I. Dan, where can people find you? That way they can see your stuff afterwards.
So I have my own YouTube channel where I talk about board games, of course, called Chairman of the Board. Mackenzie and I do quite a bit of work together, so I'm sure you'll see me pop up on his channel more than once, and vice versa. So if you want to check my videos out, go head over to that channel. Thank you.
Yep. Make sure you're subscribed over to Dan's channel. He's going to be running our next episode of Corporate Cardboard over there. And just in general, we do a lot of collaborations. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. And Dan, thanks again for coming by. But everybody, SideGame strong. See ya.
Goodbye.